Okay. Maddie and I want to serve you communion this morning. And before we do that, and before we have our closing song, we want to bring you in on a little, some conversation that we've been having as a family and also as leadership. 16 years ago, this was a dance hall, bar, steakhouse. Quarry Rock didn't exist. And we had no idea what God was going to do. We had no idea what it was going to look like. But what we knew was that God was up to something big. And so we took a step, I would consider it a ginormous step of faith, and we planted Quarry Rock Church. We knew that God had called us here. And we have went through some amazing, indescribable, fun times. And honestly, we've weathered some pretty serious storms as well. But over and over, God kept coming back and reminding us that this is His church. You know, I'd get all worried and freaked out, and God would say, it's my church, it's not yours. And He said He'd build His church, and He has. Listen, this church, through God's power and your faithfulness, has done amazing things. And because of that, you are incredibly healthy and strong. And as I look back now, a lot of times, remember, we talk about how it's sometimes good to keep that rearview mirror so you can not necessarily focus on the past, but every once in a while see where you've been. And as I look back over the past, I see so clearly now why God allowed some things to come and some things to not come to fruition in the life of our church. God is writing an amazing story through this church. We aren't some wimpy little church built on sand. I'll tell you that. We are strong. We are solid. In fact, we are built on the rock, and we are Quarry Rock. And lately, God has been reminding me of some of the preaching that I have been doing for years. And I've had to go, thanks a lot, God. That was for them, not for me. This is what my first thoughts were. But that teaching that I've been saying over and over, that God doesn't call us to comfort. He calls us to commitment. He calls us to be committed. And so you could imagine the look on my face when God asked me, Milt, are you comfortable? My initial reply is somebody says, are you comfortable? You want to say, yeah, I'm comfortable. I mean, no, yes, no, yes. And God's like, yeah, you're comfortable. And I'm like, well, is that a problem? Comfort seems to be like a good thing. And He says, it's fine. As long as you're willing to say what I want you to say, do what I want you to do, and go where I want you to go. Are you willing? I said, well, of course. And just as sure as I am that God called us here almost 16 years ago, we are just as sure that God is now calling us to a church in Soldotna, Alaska. Evidently, God and our district superintendent, Wes Smith, believes we have the giftedness, the gifts or whatever that's needed at this church in Alaska. And honestly, I have to say this must be a God thing. Because at our age, if we have done any daydreaming at all, it's been of warmth and beaches. Not black bears, moose, and mountains covered with snow. But with all of that being said, Quarry Rock is strong and healthy. You've got great leadership, both in the official leadership team and lay leaders in this church. And Pastor Wes will not leave us hanging. He will walk through this entire journey very closely to make sure that the right next senior pastor is selected. And you're going to be kept well informed about all of the decisions and discussions, and you are going to have a humongous responsibility in selecting and breaking in a new senior pastor. I fully believe that God has used us for a season to get us to where we are today. And I believe that God already, though none of us know, I believe that God already has the next person selected that will be here, that will be able to take this church to places that I just couldn't, that we couldn't. And that's the cool thing about God, is it's not dependent upon me. I believe he used us for a season to get us from there to here. And it's like Moses. He didn't even get to go into the promised land, right? That was Joshua's legacy. That was Joshua's moment of fame, if you will. He was the one that led the people of Israel into the promised land. And honestly, I believe that this is the moment that if we don't go sideways, this is so important, church. Like if anybody's heart is broken right now, it's mine. Because I love you guys. I love this place. But we can't go sideways. We can't get mad. We can't get sad. We can't pick up our ball and go to a new playground. We have to be God's people because he is in total control. This moment, this legacy moment for the next Joshua coming in, there's going to be a time in probably not too far distant future where we're going to look back. You're going to look back and you're going to see the best thing that ever happened. Because though, hopefully most of you love me, love us, but even though you love us, you're going to look at this defining moment and realize that this next Joshua, this next person coming in, is going to take this church to places that it's never been before. I honestly believe that. This is really, really hard for us. I hope you know that. But we also know that we make our plans, but God's purposes prevail. Amen? We feel loss. We feel grief. But at the same time, when we realize the brevity of life, of how short life really is, we're also really excited to stay walking in his will. I tell our kids, the safest place that I can put you, the safest environment I can put you in is for us to be in the middle of God's will. It may not be physical danger, but I believe just as sure as God has poured out his blessings on our family, he could pull those back. Just as sure as he has poured blessings on our church family, he could pull those back. So we could say, no, God, I know what you said. We're comfortable and we're choosing comfort over commitment. I think our family suffers. I think we suffer. I think you suffer. I think our community suffers. I think that community suffers. The safest place for us to be is right in the middle of God's will. The safest place for you to be is right in the middle of God's will. So if I can ask you one thing, please don't go sideways. Don't let the devil have any victories in this. This is God's church. This is God's plan. God is going to do his thing. But it requires all of us. Stay focused on him, not our feelings, not our pain, not our desires, but I thought. Well, I thought too. I thought one day I was just going to fall over and have a heart attack right here on this very platform, and that was going to be the end of my story. And I was okay with that. But that's not the way it's going to be. I know there are probably lots of questions running through your minds. Time frames, when, how, where, when, all that stuff. And there will be adequate and ample time for those questions. But for today, I want us to just rest in the goodness of God. Today, I want us to celebrate who God is, where He has brought us from, where we are, and with expectation, with an excited heart of where He's going to take us to. I want us just to bask in His goodness. We're not leaving tomorrow, y'all, okay? I know some of you are like, darn it. We'll be here for several more weeks. And but for today, let's just embrace His goodness. Again, you are strong, you are healthy, and I can say with absolute certainty that for Quarry Rock, the best is yet to come.